I'd like to welcome everyone to the May 17th special school committee meeting. Can we all please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, if everyone could take a moment for a moment of silence. Thank you all. I will consider a motion to enter into executive session under RIGL section 42-46-5A2 via roll call.
So moved.
Second.
Travis Audi,
Aye.
Hannah Ayotte, Megan Gonzalez,
Aye.
Susan Kinane,
Aye.
Mike Rocha.
Aye. Ready? Here we go. Ready? All right. Welcome everyone back to open session. I'm telling you that there were no votes taken in executive session, and I will consider a motion to seal the minutes of executive session.
So moved. Second.
We'll vote via roll call.
Travis Audi.
Aye.
Hannah Ayat. Aye. Megan Gonzalez. Aye. Susan Canane.
Aye.
Mike Rocha.
Aye. Excellent. Item 4.1, discussion of the budget committee report. I want to thank everybody that's attending tonight. We do not want tonight to be contentious. We are just merely going to roll out facts in terms of there was statements made, and we have our data and our facts from our finance director, and we will be discussing that. And then following discussing and clarifying the factual statements or the lack thereof that were made in the budget committee report, we will be discussing what level funding looks like for our community and our school and some of the programs, extracurricular activities and funding that would be cut and or manipulated should we go down this level funding road. So first and foremost, a discussion of the budget committee report. Everybody in this room received a financial town meeting mailer. There was a recommendation from the budget committee, which we all read. And in doing so, we found several misrepresentations. We'll chalk them up to not being thorough with follow-up. So here today, we will be thorough and we will go through the items. Mr. McNamee, do you want to start us off, or how do you want to do this? I know that you have spent a considerable amount of time in the past years, but then also kind of going through some of the concerns that they highlighted. And you took your time to articulate.
I can go through the budget letter and just kind of highlight the areas that were concerning.
Please do.
So if we look at the budget letter on page 3, the next to the last paragraph, states that according to the Rhode Island Department of Education, in fiscal year 21-22, the Little Compton School District had a per pupil expenditure of $36,613. Figure that includes both high school costs and transportation costs. So I went on the RIDE website, and the report that produces the 36,613 figure from RIDE is for the FY21 year. So it's for the 2021 year, not the 21-22 year. Those numbers have not been published yet by the Department of Education. So these are a year earlier than what is presented in the budget book. The 36,613 total per pupil cost does not include the high school students. So they take the total expenditures for the FY21 year for Little Compton schools and divides it by 212 instead of dividing that by 314, I believe it is, 314, which would give us a per pupil expense of $24,666 versus the $36,000. So that's a big difference. When I discovered the source of the budget committee's numbers on the RIDE website, I contacted RIDE. I had a discussion with them. I previously had a discussion with them a year or so ago because I knew this was going to be an item of contention. And they didn't want to address it at that point in time. This time I had them amend that report. So if you go on the website, you look at this report now, it'll say updated on 5/12/23. And the footnote that indicates on this report, which is note 1, which is noted on Little Compton and Jamestown. It says that Little Compton and Jamestown do not have high schools, but instead pay tuition to send their high school students to other districts. And that was the end of the sentence. They added the per pupil, including high school students, is $24,666 for Little Compton and $21,150 for Jamestown. So
What's the difference in that number from what was reported to our taxpayers? Approximately $12,000
Yeah, the difference between the 36
pupil.
613 and the 24 666. And naturally, the Jamestown numbers, I'm not sure where the budget committee, well, I know they got those off here, but they didn't have the high school enrollment at that point in time. So when you look at the high school enrollment for Jamestown, it's about 188. So their total enrollment is 650 students. The 462 that they're showing as the enrollment. That 462 is only their K-8 enrollment on this report. And these are the only two districts that have this note on it. So all the other districts, it doesn't pertain to. It's just Little Compton and Jamestown, fortunately. So when you look at the budget letter on page 4, on the top of page 4, second paragraph down, the per pupil expenditures for Jamestown was 29,564. That should read 21,150. So in the next paragraph, they talk about comparing the municipality that was closest to Little Compton, that being Jamestown, and indicated that the student population was 287 students K through 8, but it's actually 462 students K through 8 in Jamestown. So the difference, which they say is 7,049 between the Little Compton per pupil, is really 3,516. So we take the 24,666 per pupil amount for Little Compton as adjusted with high school students. We take the Jamestown per pupil as adjusted for high school students of 21,150, and the delta on that is 3,116, not 7,049. As we go down to the fourth paragraph on page 4, we talk about the Newport County Regional Special Education Program. And the comment is made that the Little Compton schools recently decided to terminate their relationship. Well, we didn't really decide to terminate our relationship. Tiverton was looking to pull out of the collaborative, and as such, the collaborative was going to have to liquidate. We were at a kind of an advantage by staying in the collaborative, having such a small special education population and incurring about 5% of the overall costs, meaning that we didn't have to hire our own special education director. We didn't have to have somebody to account for our data. We didn't have to provide a lot of the therapists that would be needed for servicing these children. So it was kind of a win-win for us. So I think what the administration has done, and I give the superintendent credit, she has now brought on a part-time special education director, which are very difficult to find, and has brought on other staff that's going to allow us to continue to service the students at the level that they need to be serviced at with a minimal cost. When I say minimal cost, it's probably going to be less than paying the collaborative right now. And we do get some federal funding that will continue as well as we move into servicing our students independent from the collaborative. So it's not as if we decided that we were going to terminate that relationship.
No, I'll also like to note that this body decided to let the bigger bodies, i.e. Middletown and Tiverton, take the first step because we did not want to be the ones to fall on that sword. I mean, at the time, I do recall that. So the idea that we were the ones that dissolved it is just not true.
Right. And unlike when Portsmouth
Correct.
Through, we weren't in a situation where we would have to have liquidated the collaborative. And Sean, I don't know if you want to weigh in on any of that in terms of dissolution because of the fact that, at the members terminating their relationship.
Well, the only part that I'll add, I'm really not adding anything, is just to say that that was in fact the case. Little Compton was not in a position driving the dissolution.
Correct.
As a procedural matter, the way that state law regulates this, it did not make sense that the collaborative could stay open when Tiverton was withdrawing. So it forced the dissolution.
Thank you. So if we look again at page 4 in the last paragraph, there's some discussion about tuition paying students. So we have, we charge $6,000 for students that are attending Wilbur McMahon from out of district. If you look at, if we wanted to charge them the pure pupil of $24,666, I don't believe we would have anybody coming to Wilbur McMahon at this point. So I went and I looked at how much revenue was brought in from 2018 to 2023, and it's over $270,000 that was brought in. Now, there was no additional costs that were incurred for these students, and everybody knows, and I think the budget committee agrees that we put policies in place that if there were any additional costs that would have to be borne by the district, then those costs would either have to be paid or the child would have to withdraw from enrollment. And again, we were looking at classrooms with some empty seats that we can put kids in there and get $6,000 a year and not add any additional costs. So again, that was over $270,000. I'm not sure where they're saying on paper the district is losing. First of all, they used the 36,316, which should have been 24,666, but they were saying that we would be losing $30,006 per student if they weren't coming. I don't know. I just can't figure the rationale with using that. We're certainly not losing any money.
Correct. I think what it's hard for people to understand is being in hospitality in the past, you got to think you have a restaurant. Our restaurant can house how many children? 500. Right now we have 221. So up until 500, it's gravy. We got to get people in these seats. It's going to be, it's nominal. But if they're empty, they're empty. So how do you bring people in? You incentivize them. Well, we have small classroom sizes. We have the IB program. And then also it's $6,000 to send your kid out of district. Those are all incentivizations to get more people driven here. But this idea that we could charge $24,000. I know Councilor McHugh in the past, when we rolled out this program, I believe we started at 19,000. We dropped it down to 10, and there were crickets at those numbers. We didn't get anyone. So now since 2018, we had 5, now we have 9. I mean, it's trending in the right direction, but it won't be trending in the right direction if we level fund and people think, oh, Little Compton's going in a different direction. So I think that the number that they came up with there, are they subtracting the 6,000 from the 36,000 and saying, how does this work?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
There.
That would assume that you're going to get $36,000 in tuition from somebody to come into the district. And this is not necessarily being put into financial perspective, but it does say in the top first paragraph on page 5 that in the opinion of the committee, this is a result of the lack of oversight, fiscal leadership, and responsibility, offering rubber stamp consent year after year. I certainly take umbrage at that comment. You say lack of oversight, since that you get monthly financial statements from me, comparison of actual budget with projection as to where we're going to stand at the end of the year. And I've been doing that clearly for the last 12 years that I've been here. So I don't believe there's any lack of oversight. When it comes to fiscal leadership, I think that we go through that budget, we make a determination that based on the programs that we have in place, the budget that we intend to put forward is not simply, let's take the 4%, which is the max we can get.
Correct.
We're always looking at a number that makes sense based on the programs that we have in-house.
Correct.
When we look at our labor contracts, we always have in mind the budget. So we're not, we don't have, I think, exorbitant salary increases in our labor contracts. So all that taken into consideration, I think I certainly take umbrage at those comments. So that's all I have on the budget committee.
Thank you, John McNamee. Are there any members that would like to share anything?
Yeah, I just
Go ahead, Michael.
want to be fair to everybody, right? I mean, that's what we should be doing. And I know you and I have had discussions before. We had the tuition that goes to Portsmouth, which was that 15 number. And you said that there was more on top of that as far as like busing. And I know we do the library after school and what have you. I guess I kind of look at it and I say to myself, well, what does that cost? Because that does not cost us 24, right? For us to send our kids to Portsmouth at that point.
Yeah, but you really can't look at that because you got overhead items. For example, the superintendent is involved with Portsmouth on a daily basis and the kids that go there too. So you have the administration dealing with Portsmouth and high school students. So there's not a clear distinction between what some of the administration is doing just for K-8 versus the high school students. You know, you got special education resources district-wide, not necessarily just for K-8. So there are a lot of things that go into that. Certainly, legal counsel deals with high school issues, not just K-8 issues as well, too. So all those things would pertain to the overall district, including the high school. So.
Because I guess one's argument could be that this is the amount that we pay Portsmouth, and then you take that off and you divide it by however many students we have. And I don't know if that's how they came up with those numbers or not. I don't know. I haven't done the numbers, but I'm just saying that.
They missed 102 students. They didn't account for Portsmouth in the number.
No, I mean, like our budget's like what, 7.4 or 7.
7, 7,
Six
7,
million.
6, 5, 5, 4.
Yeah.
$7,776,544.
So I'm just asking, is if we took that 1,000,001 that we pay Portsmouth, you take that off our 7.6, you take that number and divide it by the amount of students, is that where the number, where does that number equate to? Is that a number of, I know you're not agreeing with me. Yeah, no, I'm asking the question.
Saying it doesn't make any sense because you've got other costs that are being borne by that. If we're looking at just direct costs, yeah, you got tuition and you got transportation,
Right.
but you've got other costs that being need to be absorbed by having a high school in Portsmouth here in Little Compton. So you really can't look at it that way.
When did we all vote to approve the budget and dissect it? When was the budget?
February
Was it-
28th.
Okay,
I was gonna say, was it April and March? or-
February 28th.
Wow,
okay.
The other issue that was brought up here, and they made the comment that based on the size of the school department budget, it serves a much smaller part of the population than, let's say, the town budget. Well, I mean, that really applies to every city and town in the state. It's not just here in Little Compton, because you have, you know, students, you know, we're in Lincoln, we have maybe 200 students here, but, you know, we have a population of maybe 34,000 or more. Always have that in every district when you're looking at
Correct.
the amount of the school budget, the amount of the direct impact on families in the community.
Go ahead, Hannah.
Just to that point, I think it's important to point out that our school budget is only 45% of the town appropriation about. Is that the number you reached, John? Or the town budget in full, rather? Our school budget's 45% of that.
Yep.
And I looked into it a little bit on my own, and just to compare to Jamestown, as the budget committee did, their school budget is 51% of their town budget. So just talking about comparing and the town budgets there, it's a big difference.
Correct. I mean, yeah, I would say, I mean, John, you correct me if I'm wrong. There's 39 cities and towns in the state of Rhode Island. I would imagine that the school is the largest budget for almost all of them,
It's probably a fair statement.
right? It's got to be close. And if not, it's probably 50% of any budget in any community. So the fact that we're responsible at 50 or below in these economic times, I mean, that's what I keep going back to. I remember our day one with the budget. The first thing I said to you, I said, how are we going to not raise it? At the time, I think inflation was 7.9%. I said, how are we going to heat the school? Heating oil. And you're like, well, that has to come from the State House. Let's see what we could do. And we got creative and put forth a unanimous. And I thought we did our due diligence. I mean, I don't know anybody in this room that, you know, we have union contracts, most of which are 1% to 2% increases. And then somehow with all the other minutia, we're at 0.32%. I mean, we can't not honor the contracts without litigious action, I would imagine. Attorney Clow.
They're binding contracts.
There you are. So I just go back to it. We're reasonable folks. If there was an outrageous or outstanding concern that we could maybe delve into, we're willing to do that. But I feel like in the economic times that we're living in right now, I feel like the budget we submitted unanimously was very, very fiscally responsible to the students, the outcomes, and the community.
That budget also finances the programs educational programs that we have. So you look at those and you look at, for example, the IB program, that's going to have some added costs there too. So based on the programs that we have in place, we put together a budget that's going to be able to fund those programs. So we clearly look at that.
All right, I think we've gone through. Are you comfortable with outlining? I mean, is there anything else you'd like to highlight that came out as a glaring deficiency in your mind?
On public, no.
So at this point, we did start to pivot. I would like to inform everyone in this room and the people at home, if we are level funded next Wednesday, what are the implications? Extracurricular, what programs will be on so Principal McKinnon or
Yeah, I can speak to that.
Please.
Person. No, I think when we all look back at our days in school, we don't remember necessarily the Pythagorean theorem, but we do remember the field trips that we went on, the times that we had with our teammates, so on and so forth. And I, when you look at cutting, I think right away, you look at the extracurriculars, unfortunately. We've had up to this point in time, well, I should be including the month of June as well. We'll have 15 field trips that have gone out this year. Some outstanding field trips. We have Miss Hollow took the 4th and 5th grade to the Boston Museum of Science a week ago. Our first grade's going to Roger Williams Park in June. We just had a second grade group that came back from the race around the world.
That's awesome.
And had a firsthand experience with Charlie Enright and Race Newport. Those are probably things that are gonna, be impacted. You look at your extracurriculars, we don't offer a whole lot of extracurriculars, but the ones we do, have great membership with us, with our students. Your soccer, your cross country, basketball for both boys and girls. And we have a track meet today at UMass Dartmouth with some area schools. transportation is a big part. It does bite into certainly to the school budget. We're just looking at it today. And no matter where you go, you're probably averaging somewhere around $500 per bus trip. One bus trip that did take a little bit more was a First Tech, which is our robotics STEM program. That was a $900 bus trip because it was an all-day affair in Warwick. So, those are the things that probably would be first on the chop block because, we need, obviously, English, math, social studies, science. Can't get by without having those things. So you have to look at some of the other areas. And again, I think those are areas that, certainly motivates the student in school. It's that carrot that you can put out in front of them that certainly could, make a difference in their school year and their school day. So again, we're going to keep this real wide. A concern I have is, the arts. We had a talent show last week, well attended by, the town. But those things, could end up being, those are part of the extracurriculars. Those are things, our Christmas concerts are, we could still have an art show because we will have an art teacher and we will have, chorus here, but those little bit extra, the play, for example, another example, things that could end up disappearing.
Anyone have any questions? Go ahead.
But I know in the past, we've looked at bus monitors and for safety reasons, we didn't want to address that. But RIDE does allow an exception on K5. You can get an exemption, but I wouldn't recommend that for safety reasons, but that would be a $75,000 savings. But we have a late bus that's in Portsmouth. Probably have to take a look at that. You've got we have the after-school library program at Portsmouth that again has a bit of a cost associated with it as well. Probably have to look at something like that. Some of the other areas, you look at your fringe benefits and your salaries, you really don't have any really wiggle room on that. Could we say we're going to spend a little bit less on maintenance here? But you never know. Like last week, the water
Here to go is exactly.
you have those expenses built in there. I don't think there's any reduction in curriculum cost, Jack, that we
No.
can look at.
No, and with IB being on the precipice of getting a verification, the last thing I would want to see is, the rug kind of getting pulled out from underneath us with the IB. And when I say that, programs like design, which is an IB program, it's expected from IB, but there's certainly that tie-in with our students leaving Wilbur McMahon School and going over to Portsmouth in their engineering CTE program. It's a great segue for our students going over there. So, those little things that, could be impacted, design and the arts. IB looks at the arts as important as a mathematics class in some ways. So again, things that, we need to look at. I would hate to see all the work that with IB that our students, our staff, our coordinators have put forward. It's been a tremendous lift and it's going to be a feather in our cap for the entire community.
Correct.
Get it.
Correct.
Can I just,
Please, Megan.
so just to kind of echo what you said, it just sounds like every single thing mentioned would directly impact our children and directly. We're talking about field trips. I've sat on meetings before. Mike, specifically, you've mentioned how important field trips and all of those extracurricular activities and memories are and mean to the kids. So I just ahead of, go ahead.
If I could speak a little bit to the field trips, and a lot of times our PST and the Education Foundation in our community, they front the money for every kid to go to these things. The school picks up the cost of the buses. And that's what the cost is. It's not so much those, the foundation will pay for the students to go to the Museum of Science in Boston. But it's funding of the transportation, which we know is it's a heavy lift.
Right. And I mean, you mentioned the play, the arts program, sports. Some kids don't excel in academics and that's their outlet in school. So just really urging the public to show up on Wednesday and just really reflect on the things that are going to be eliminated if the budget committee recommendations are approved.
The other thing we have to look at is the capital program that we do have. So we would probably
Let's talk about that because that's a big,
put that on hold, depending on, whether we get cuts or make a determination as, what the cut should be.
correct.
So that would be something that we would have to look at as well.
And just so we can kind of, I don't know if everyone is aware, the CapEx program is directly tied to RIDE and we're reimbursed for some of the projects that we perform, are we not?
We get 35 cents on every dollar back from RIDE for every
5 cents.
spend. So basically, we're using that capital reserve as a revolving fund
Mhm.
so that we can do as much improvements as we can. If you recall, we did the school back in 2014. It was like 14.5 million. That's almost 10 years ago now. So we have to put together a program. We've got the approval from RIDE for actually almost a 10-year program. We went to the town council and got their blessing on that program. So now it's a matter of getting the dollars together so that we can fund it. And that's a combination of trying to use some monies that we might have available through the Northern Collaborative, as well as some fund balance we have here, and trying to leverage that with the state, the housing aid that we get from RIDE.
Mhm. Yeah, I think that is something that's lost on folks, that when the town does a renovation, while there might be grant money available, it's typically dollar for dollar. But when the school does a renovation, we could be reimbursed.
Right.
Something to consider with.
And that operating budget doesn't have any capital in it other than technology capital.
Okay.
So, yeah. I want to look at this from a different angle as everybody else is looking. Excuse me, I'm going to straw through here. I was the chair of the high school. We would choose when we went out for bids for high school, and my concern was the added cost that we were going to have in the increase in tuition from our current to, and how are we going to fund that back at that point? And there was conversations that went on between myself, the superintendent, the attorney, and the finance, that there was an anticipation of retirements coming up this year. We've had one, we've got another one that's coming. And at that point, attrition, employee attrition was spoke about, that could be a possibility. And I think that we should still look at that. One of the things that I was concerned about at the time was that if we were to go down that route, I didn't want anybody to be laid off. I didn't want any teachers to be dismissed. So that wasn't the goal behind it, but it was basically us changing some things around. And then the superintendent believed that she could do that when we had that discussion. And I think that's something that this committee should circle back with her if needed. And we don't need to, it's always good to have Plan B, right? But I don't want to get everybody worked up until we actually know what the results are.
Correct. I mean, we still-
Next week.
correct.
But I think that's something that, yes, Megan, field trips are important to me for kids to have experiences outside classrooms. And I think that we could still do this through, but, and I think we need to loop the superintendent back in on this. So I don't want to jump the gun and get everybody excited, but that's where I would be leaning towards.
If they level funded us, you would be looking at not, okay. But that's, like I said, that's, everything is going to be on the table if we get level funded. That's what this conversation was about.
No, I have a question. I have a question.
Go ahead, Hannah.
So just to be clear with what you're proposing, Mike, that you're proposing that if the budget committee is level funds us next week, that this committee consider withdrawing from the Portsmouth High School tuition contract?
I didn't say that.
So what was your suggestion?
Attrition, meaning that once the employees retire, that you didn't replace them is because it can be handled differently. And I would let the superintendent present that. I don't want to speak for her.
So your solution is larger class sizes then?
I didn't say that.
Okay.
Well, if there's less teachers, Michael.
That's
Why don't you, again, let's not assume things let's go by what the superintendent, I don't want to speak for her.
I understand,
Okay, then.
I'm just asking about your solutions, not hers.
but if a teacher retires, and they're not replaced, there will 100% be one, at least one classroom that is larger.
Yeah.
At least one.
Okay. So if that's the case, if that's what her goal was, and we have one classroom that's larger, and we can still have all the other services still in effect so that nobody else gets affected, so that
I mean, it's $177,000 we're short. One teacher retiring is not going to make up that shortfall. We are in a predicament that if the townspeople do not show up next week in support of the school, we will be making incredibly difficult decisions, possibly the one you're speaking of right now, where we're not renewing a teacher, possibly not having extracurricular activities, sports, field trips, music, theater, dance, all of the above, affecting the impact on the IB program, which is actually going to draw tuition in, because that's the only way we're going to get out of district students. No one's moving in at 8.25% with a median household price of $875,000 in this community. So 2014, I was not here, but there was a $14 million commitment from this community. And 10 years in, we got people saying, I don't know about that. That is so short-sighted. This is a 25-year window. You set it up, you see how it rolls. We've had people drop. We've had we've had student enrollment drop. What's the major concern of that? Affordability. We cannot stroke that overnight to fix the community's affordability issue. So how can we help our bottom line? The IB program, small class sizes, by having this be a destination school for other districts where teachers are saying, there's too many kids, I can't do it. Kids aren't getting focused on. Parents are saying, my kid's getting lost in the minutia. Great. Little Compton's got the IB program. They have small class sizes. They have desirable outcomes. That's how we're going to win. But if we're going to start cutting our arms off and trying to drive with our feet, if you will.
So
I'm not saying it can't be done, but it's not going to be a smooth ride and the outcomes aren't going to be good. And this investment that the community made in 2014 of how many millions of dollars, John?
Well, including the odds where we had temporary space was about 14.5.
$14.5 million. I mean, if this community didn't want a school, that was the time to say, you know what, ship has sailed. But that investment indicates that there's a 25-year window on the building, the updates in it, and the mission that this school has. So I'm going to advocate and I'm going to fight for that. And I'm going to get all the parents into the meeting next week to raise their hands and support this, because we're moving in the right direction, and not having the IB would be crippling to the direction that we're headed, especially when everyone in this room knows no one with young families is moving to this town. And if you think that I'm wrong, prove it to me. No one's moving here. You can't afford it. We have an affordability issue. So our only outlet is to make the school so desirable that other districts say, other families say, gosh, let's send them there. And make that 270 grow and grow and grow. So we have offsets and we can continue to keep this ball rolling. But this idea that we're going to be level funded on a 2.3% increase is absolutely asinine. And then actually going over their numbers tonight, it makes me even more mad. It's simple math. It's picking up the phone. We unanimously approve this, Michael. I've done bankruptcy thing in front of the banks where no news is good news. I've had biopsies and the doctor says, no news is good news. We submitted a great budget and we didn't even hear back that, hey, we got your budget. Hey, this works. You know what? This isn't so hot. John and Lori went in front of them and they had no indication that we were going to be level funded until the mailer. So I don't know what's going on, but I'm going to fight for these kids and this community and the outcomes that this school provides. And if you're with me, great. And if you're not, that's okay too. But I'm going to remind everybody, we voted unanimously to approve this budget, unanimously. So fall on that sword when you're advocating for the other side of the fence.
So, Travis, if you don't mind, so like I said in the beginning, I'd like to have plan B. And that's why I brought up what I did. I didn't say that.
That's what Principal McKinnon was talking about.
That's plan B.
We've been talking about plan B all night. We don't want plan B. We want plan A. Plan B would have been for them to say 2.32%. You guys got to do some work on this. This doesn't work. Okay, let's find plan B. But now we're in this predicament where if we get level funded, we're going to have to make tough decisions that affect the outcomes of the kids in the community.
So let me just ask this question then, because you mentioned the 177 that was short. So I mean, you're going to know this question, this answer. I won't. But the two teachers that retired this year, one retired, one was replaced, right? The one that was replaced, and there's another one that's going to be retired. What would our savings be based on the difference? Because I'm sure they went out on a step 10. What would our savings be between the difference of the retirement and the new hire and the retirement completely? I think it's an honest question. I want to know so we know what to look forward.
It sounds like you're advocating for plan B.
Yeah.
I think.
I'm not.
You sound like you are. I
You better be
mean,
ready though.
Sounds like.
we are ready. That's why we came here tonight to inform the
Supporting the
public.
budget that we all approved
Correct.
and advocating that we made the right decision when we reviewed it.
Mike now. I'm asking,
Michael, get up.
asking
have-
a simple question.
Can I ask a simple question?
Once I get my answer, yes.
Well, I think this meeting was not to lay out numbers.
Correct.
So where the savings would be, it was to look at concepts. And certainly, if you look at what they call breakage, which is when you have a teacher retire, oftentimes you will hire one at a lower rate. And so you will have a little bit of breakage on that. So that's a number that we'll have to look at. But in today's environment, where there's a limited number of teachers, sometimes it's difficult to hire that first step. So what you think might be breakage at going from 11th step to a first step, not always the case. And I know for a fact that we're dealing with that up in Lincoln. We had 11 people that left. And the budget committee said we can hire everybody at first step. I don't think we've hired anybody at first step yet. Depending on the discipline, depending on their certification, a lot of things that go into that. So but it's something that's on the table. I agree, it's on the table. So,
I think it's, and I understand you're saying there's a lot of variables, but, and I understand I voted for the budget.
It's still not gonna make up.
What's that?
It's still not going to make up. We still have to make tough decisions. So you get some step increase. You're still losing field trips. It's not going to be 2 teachers, however you want to cut it, is not going to be $177,000. We're going to have to hire people back, and it's not going to be at like $38,000. Welcome aboard. Teachers have leverage now.
Travis, we need to ask these questions though, so that we know that if we do get that that card dealt to us where, hey, guess what, school committee, this is what you got to deal with. You got this budget cut. We need to know these answers. And if this is our time to ask those questions, I don't think there's anything wrong with asking the questions.
No, there's nothing.
I'm not advocating that's what I want to go do. I'm just saying, let's ask these questions and go out there. I mean, Mr. McKinnon threw out some ideas. I'm just asking, on things that were presented to me
Correct.
during the high school process.
Correct.
So I don't think there's anything wrong with that. And I shouldn't be attacked for that.
Fair.
I have a couple comments to make. I was also part of that high school contract negotiation committee, and I wasn't a part of that conversation. So I feel like whatever conversation that was is not relevant to today, and we need to wait till Superintendent Dias Mitchell is here for her to accurately reflect whatever conversation you may or may not have had with her. And then I'd like to ask you, Mike, do you support the budget that we proposed to the town?
Hey, did I vote for it?
Do you,
Did I vote for it?
it's a yes or no question. Do you support the budget that we proposed to the
Hey,
town?
this is not about me.
Michael, if
It
you
is.
can't answer yes or no right
I
now.
voted yes, didn't
Okay,
I?
then that's you
So
should
why
be
am I
confident in saying yes.
Why is she attacking me?
She's not. She's simply asking because I got to tell you, your tone is not on team school committee unanimous voting for the budget.
Do you, if
You
I wasn't
started
like-
with, I had a off the record conversation with Lori and she said, she's not here to defend herself.
I wasn't off the record
Well, Hannah wasn't there.
because Hannah couldn't be there because. of
Well,
open
I
meetings.
mean, it's a very
So that sounds off
interesting
the record.
approach.
That's not a public conversation then if I wasn't there and it wasn't.
And all
a
that stuff will
committee
be on the
meeting.
table.
I'm going to recommend that we stick
Yeah.
to.
So back to my question, please. Mike, do you support the school committee budget that we proposed to the town?
I did.
Are you continuously publicly supporting that budget?
Yes, I did, didn't I? I
You
voted
did.
yes. If I didn't support it, I would have voted no.
That is not my question.
Well.
Are
I'm done
you,
with the questions
are
then.
you,
I don't know what else you want me to
He's
do.
not going to answer it.
are you publicly
I'm
supporting
done.
the majority decision of the school committee?
Hannah, I voted yes to support. the
Right
budget.
now, are you publicly supporting the school committee budget, the majority decision, yes or no?
Yes, Hannah, what are you trying
Thank
to
you.
say from
Because
that?
if you are not, you will violate school committee
I
bylaws.
recommend we move on.
All right, let's move on. Let's move on.
Oh, my God.
All right, it's getting heat. I wanted to avoid this. But at the same time, I realize that people are passionate about the outcomes. With that being said, we have discussed the impacts, potential impacts. And Michael, to speak to your point, they are going to be tough decisions and we do need to hear all the options. And those are options that you laid out. I agree. But I'd like to focus on the next piece, which is the public input. Because I know that there's a lot of people that have reached out to all of us up here regarding their concerns. So if anyone would like to share any public input, it would be welcome. Please state your name, address for the record.
Roger Lord, Bramblewood Cross, Little Compton. I can't remember any school year that did not end in a surplus. Now, I know that there's a general law in Rhode Island that says the school cannot be forced to use that surplus in the next year's budget. But there's no law that says you can't. Now, that's my question. I believe the last school committee meeting, John mentioned there was a surplus. I don't know how much, I forgot. But why can't you consider that as part of the solution also, if the cut comes through next week?
It's a fair point. John, do we carry, what is it? What are we going to come clean?
When you start to discuss that, you have a lot of variables. For example, number of out-of-district students for special education. All you need is a couple of students and you're, up to $200,000. So you always need to have a little bit of a cushion in these budgets. And I don't think there's a big cushion. We never put any capital in our budget. So in order for us to get capital set aside, we need to kind of pull that out of operations. The surplus this year, as I indicated, is a result of we had less students going to Portsmouth High School than we had budgeted for. Many of them, some of them had gone to private schools, so you can't necessarily account for that in the budget. So there is certainly going to be a surplus, but it's we also have the monies that are coming in from the collaborative that is part of that surplus that we're also transferring over to the capital so that we can leverage that money and get some improvements done at the school. So I don't personally think we have any excess fund balance sitting on the school side at this point.
Thank you, John. Any other public comments?
What happens to?
Name and address.
Oh, Claudia McNeil, Long Highway. What happens to the plan to put solar panels on the school if it's level funded, if the budget's level funded?
I think that's a hard, it would be a hard stop. I mean, Sean, can we talk about this or?
We put it on hold.
Certainly under the agenda items, we can talk about budget implications, yes.
So I think I could at least answer this. At our last meeting, we did have a line item that we were going to discuss the solar, but because of the mailer indicating the level funding, we tabled it. So if we're level funded, that solar project absolutely goes away. Am I right in assuming that?
And how much does that save? How much would it have saved the town if we had the solar panels?
Oh, over, my gosh, Doctor, let me see, I have his,
Just shy of 1.5 million over 25 years.
there you go.
Thank you.
My name's Larry Anderson. I'm currently living in Snow Road. I want to thank Mr. McNamee for going through the Budget Committee's letter and to correct some of the misrepresentations and errors that are in there. The one that stopped me cold was one he referred to. It said, "It is the Budget Committee's belief that school spending has gone unchecked for too long and the budget is increasing at an alarming rate." It goes on, "In the opinion of the committee," this is the Budget Committee, "this is a result of lack of oversight, fiscal leadership, and responsibility." Well, I heard Mr. McNamee say he took umbrage at that, and I'm not surprised he did. Because that's just that phrase in my observation of over more than 35 years. The only person who's probably gone to more meetings than I have in town over that period of time is Roger Lord. And that's just a tendentious, reckless, and false statement. I've served on budget committees. I've served on the town council. I've served as town moderator. I've gone to probably every town meeting for the last 40 years. We've had school wars on these same arguments. I've heard them again and again. For a variety of reasons, including the tightening of the state laws with regard to the tax caps for both the tax levy and the schools. There has never been a period in those 40 years when the school department has run on a more even keel economically, especially during the tenure of Mr. McNamee's highly professional assistance to the school committee. Your budgets have always been within that cap. If anything, they've been less than the municipal side of the budget. And that's easily shown. The percentage of school spending has decreased over recent years as a portion of the town budget. The budget committee says nothing about that. I've served on the council. There is no month-to-month oversight of spending the way that you get it with reports from of where you stand on the budget. The argument of surplus is a total double standard. The council gets a contingency fund. There's no contingency line item. There's no contingency line item in the school budget. If the school budget runs any kind of surplus, it's hammered that we're going to take $1 million plus out of the general fund surplus on the town side. Why does the fiscal? We say we're frugal and good managers if we run up surpluses on the town side for underestimating revenues and over appropriating funds. So I just want to, so I've been on, so my wife was on the school committee for 8 years in the early 90s. In 1 year during the DEPCO credit union thing, the towns, at that time, the town's state aid, if I have this right, the town's state aid was $700,000, real dollars. Now 30 years later, you're on a budget that's 2 or 3 times higher, your state aid is half that still. So this statement is just irresponsible. It's wrong. It's an insult to your staff and to you. It's just outrageous.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson. Thank you. Anyone else?
Andy Ryan, Pedgebrook Road. I would just like to dig in a little bit, if we could, on this idea of why it's irresponsible to use a per pupil cost in a small school district compared to using a per pupil cost when you have economies of scale, say like Cranston or large school districts. And since we have a financial expert that handles school budgets and across, I think it might be useful for the public to be able to understand a little bit about how you use numbers and why it's really hard to use a per pupil cost and why it's incorrect to want to segment out one or a few grades of education and then lump it all in another class. We don't take out, like my kids are in first grade. I think there's 21 kids in their classroom this semester or something like that. We don't calculate their cost and then look at kindergarten and then calculate their cost and then, look at it's, can you talk a little bit about scale and why per pupil cost works in large school systems to look at efficiencies, but it doesn't work in small school systems?
Yeah, when you look at, and I can refer to Lincoln where I work as well, where we have basically no room for expansion. So you build a school, and if it's built for, in this case, the school probably on the RIDE standards would probably handle about 500 students. So the capacity there of 500 students, you're going to wind up spreading that cost for utilities and over a much broader enrollment. So if you had the 450 students, you're going to drive that per pupil cost down. I mean, you look at New Shoreham, Black Island, and you can see how those costs are so high over there because you just don't have the critical mass. And, we're kind of at a fine line here because, we're trying to get more students in, tuition paying students in, to fill those seats to kind of make up for that capacity shortfall. But generally, when you have schools like, the bigger districts, East Providence or even Cranston and Providence, those schools are pretty much up to capacity in a lot of respects. Their problem is they can't get enough teachers to go into those schools too. So in our case, if we had more students, you would see that per pupil cost drive down. But it's a function of we have the capacity, we don't have the enrollment that the school was initially built for.
So would that change the tax? Like, I think people, it just seems like people get fixated on this number because it's kind of a big number to kind of put out there, right? And it wouldn't change people's tax, like people's taxes wouldn't go down if we have more students in our school, right? Because I think that's the inference that when they put a number like that, they're suggesting somehow your taxes are a lot because your per pupil cost is a lot, right? That's what I read.
When you look at the budget, we increased our budget by a little over 2% this year in total costs. And our contracts probably were at 2% in terms of cost increases. Benefits in terms of healthcare, we may have a little bit. I think we probably had a decrease in that, so we're able to kind of bring some of those costs down. In that area, we did have a big jump in our Portsmouth High School tuition number, but again, enrollment impacts that number because we initially thought we were going to have somewhere around 86. And we've got 77 students there, so we had a delta of 9. Now, some of those students may have gone to another technical school like Newport Career and Tech, so we wind up paying tuition there as well too. But so we were able to kind of save some money in that regard. And what that does is puts us in a position for next year as we move forward. Because now we've got the higher number in the base. And now we're going up to a little bit higher tuition. And next year, we're going to have more kids at high school, so. It doesn't impact, the per pupil is, and what Ride is trying to do is trying to do comparisons, but you really have to look at similar institutions. So they'll go through, they'll identify those schools that should be in your group for comparison. For example, like you've got urban ring schools, like those schools that border urban. So you look at Providence, you've got North Providence, that would be an urban ring. If you look at Warwick, West Warwick would be an urban ring school because you're right in adjacent to urban community. So they kind of classify those. In our case, we're probably looking at, New Shoreham, Jamestown, and Little Compton when they're looking at those. But when they compare us in terms of our results, educational results, they're comparing us to Barrington, East Greenwich, those higher, those schools that certainly have more capacity than we have at this point, and we're able to compete at those levels, so.
Thank you, John. Any other public comment? Excellent. This time, I'd like to just thank everybody for arriving tonight, taking the time, certainly the administration, certainly the school committee, and then also the members of the public. Tonight was to inform on the misinformation and get the information into folks that were yearning for answers. But this is to really set us up. We need everyone that is passionate about this community to show up next Wednesday at 7 p.m. Doors open at 6 p.m. at this building, the Wilbur McMahon School Gymnasium, for the financial town meeting. I think we are working on something with that,
Okay.
with possible childcare. We're talking about that. But nonetheless, if you have the time, if you have the means, if you need a ride, reach out. I know Michael has put that out on the bulletin that seniors, if you need rides, we can provide them. And then certainly please make the time. If you have further questions, we're all available, as are these folks. But I thank you all for coming out. And at this point, I would ask for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?